Good morning. I'm out here in the garden. I just wanted to update you really quick on the tomato bed. There's so many cool things that are ready right now that it's almost like too much for us to eat, which is great because we have the farm stand this weekend, so I'll be able to get all that stuff off the plants, which promotes new growth and just lets me get rid of some things that I'm just not going to eat. We can't eat all the stuff in this garden. We just can't. But I wanted to update you on the tomato plants because I'm out here and I was looking at them and I was just crossing my fingers that nothing would be burnt, because the day after me and Key pruned last week, there was a really hot, intense like Sunday where I was really worried that they'd get burnt because the little tiny tomatoes and some of the leaves and stuff that were underneath the jungle had never really been exposed to that kind of sunlight. So I was really expecting to come out here and see a lot of burnt stuff, but I was really surprised to see that most of the tomatoes that have just been like green forever have really ripened up, which really proves to me that the plant was able to focus more on, getting the fruit ripe than just growing more leaves for no reason. So I was really worried because I was thinking cutting all that extra off was going to limit the growth, but man, check these out. They are looking amazing. So all these tomatoes that look like this, a lot of them have really ripened up. I've already picked some this morning, but I'm just noticing that just everywhere. And it wasn't like this before. When I would look inside the leaves, it would look like all that where it was just green, and now it's just starting to ripen up, which I'm really happy about because these yellow pear tomatoes are my favorite. They get eaten so fast that they hardly ever make it inside the house. So what I'll do is I'll come up first here and start picking some tomatoes and just kind of snack on them throughout the garden while I'm picking everything else. So I don't even think the rest of my family has had these yellow pear tomatoes because I really do eat them all. So I am going to go through and harvest a few things and take you along with me. So before we get to harvesting, I did want to mention one little thing here. I had grown corn before and I stopped because I had a very small garden. I'm talking like these beds, these 4 beds put together, that was it. And what was happening is that after a certain amount of time, the aphids would move in on the corn, which isn't a big problem. They don't really mess with the corn quality at all. It just is gross to look at, and they do start to suffocate the corn after a while if you don't pick it in time. But I'm okay with that if it's separate from the rest of my garden. What was happening before when I had this little tiny itty bitty garden was that the aphids would get on the corn. Then of course they would move down to the cantaloupe, which has happened. I have seen a lot of aphids on the cantaloupe leaves because I'm just starting to notice a lot of funky stuff going on with my cantaloupe. But the chances of them moving on to another plant, like say my beans or my other squash or tomatoes or anything, was very high because it was very densely planted, so they could just move to the next plant, the next plant, the next plant. See, they start to move in, and then followed by the aphids are the ants. That's not a big deal because I can harvest that today, wash all that off, everything on the inside's fine. But it's just not cool because there's so many ants everywhere. So what I've done, I'm going to go ahead and harvest this probably in the next couple days, little by little as we eat them. These ears are a little bit too small, but some of these bigger ones will be just fine. And what I'll do is harvest this corn, plant something else in its place, maybe another round of corn. We still have time. And what I did over here in this other batch of corn, which also has aphids and ants, is I sprinkled some diatomaceous earth down at the bottom. If you've never heard of diatomaceous earth, it's basically a powder you can buy that acts as little razor blades on things with an exoskeleton. So like earwigs, earwigs, ants, those types of pests. Once they come down the stalk and crawl through the diatomaceous earth, it acts like little razor blades on their exoskeleton, which cuts holes in it, and that's basically how they breathe. But if you look in here, they've really taken over all these artichoke plants. I had to pull probably about 5 plants already, and I'm not sure if they're just after the aphids that are under those leaves, or like the ants are just really loving something that's coming off the artichokes. But I don't know how people grow artichokes in my area without spraying stuff, because it just doesn't seem possible to me. The corn is worth it, I will say that, but next time I will be a little bit more proactive on the diatomaceous earth and other steps to prevent the aphids from just going to town here, because then, like I said, they bring the ants. Another problem I'm noticing over here on these squash, and it's funny that it's only the squash that I bought and brought in from a store. The rest of it I've grown from seed, is powdery mildew, and that is basically just a mildew that starts to grow on all the leaves. Like, it's almost like a fungus, and it sets up on these leaves, and it does not go away, and it spreads fast. I'm just really interested. It's interesting for me to see that it's only on the plants that I brought in from a big box store, which goes to prove that putting seeds in the ground versus buying plants and putting them in the ground is way more beneficial. I know there's some that some people who can't start their own seeds, but if you wait long enough in the season, even right now, it would be perfect to stick that seed in the ground, and you still have plenty of time in zone 10B to grow so much. So yeah, I agree with buying plants, and if you can't start them and you're afraid to and you just keep killing plants, I understand buying plants to bring in, because I personally sell plants and that is a great business for me. But I really do encourage people to just try from seed, put some in those little yogurt containers, put them on a windowsill, give them some sunlight. It'll work out pretty good. But if you don't want to do that, like I said, just come out to your garden, put the seed in the ground. It's going to be a waiting game, and I know people are impatient, but it's so much it's such a stronger plant when you have it seeded and growing exactly where it's going to flourish, because transplanting does put a little bit of trauma onto your plants, and some of them don't bounce back. Some of them go on to live beautiful lives and flourish and grow so many cool things, but some of them just don't do well. In some future videos, I'll make some content on how to know which things to transplant and which things don't do well transplanting, what you can start from seed, just different things like that. So let's get to harvesting. Let's get to the fun stuff. So there is still so much more I could harvest right now. A lot of these flowers are ready. There's quite a few more squash, a lot of peppers, all the tomatoes. But what I like to do is wait until Friday afternoon or even early Saturday morning. When I set up my farm stand, I like to just stock it fresh so everything's nice and crispy, nothing's wilted. So if I harvest some of this stuff, like the tomatoes, I can harvest those if they're starting to kind of turn red, but if I harvest the red ones today, they'll be so mushy for Saturday. So I'm just going to leave them on the plants and come and hustle and do all that. So I'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining me today.